What's up, everybody? We're talking about Wes Anderson films here, and I feel like we need to be a little bit more colorful. So, what about that? I feel better? I think we feel right at home right there. If you've been watching me for some time now and you're familiar with this channel, you know how much I adore Wes Anderson. Wes Anderson is one of my favorite directors out there right now, maybe of all time. And a lot of his movies are some of my all-time favorite movies that I've watched ever. So of course, Asteroid City coming out, I have to talk about it, and I'm eagerly anticipating it, and finally having a chance to see it. I'll tell you right now, it's a good one, and I'll explain why I feel that way right now.
They're strange, aren't they? They're children compared to normal people.
Yes, that's correct.
It's true.
If you haven't heard this story before, I'm going to quickly take you back to 1998. That's when a movie called Rushmore first came out. And I didn't know anything about this movie. I didn't know anything about the director, Wes Anderson, at the time. All I remember was seeing these like really quirky commercials on MTV, with Max and putting his plays together and everything. And I was like, oh, this looks like something that really speaks to me. And then I saw the movie in theaters and I was like, wow, what is this? What am I experiencing? And it was that moment where I fell in love with Wes Anderson. And of course, when he followed up with the Royal Tenenbaums, sold. That's it. I knew right away, right there and then, Wes Anderson is a director for me. And ever since, I have not missed any of his films when they've come out. I've enjoyed them thoroughly, not equally. I mean, there are definitely some movies that I enjoyed more so than others. But in recent history, we've gotten movies like French Dispatch and Grand Budapest Hotel, Darling Limited. I know a lot of people's favorites is Moonrise Kingdom that came out back in 2012. Well, Asteroid City finally comes back to America since 2012's Moonrise Kingdom, and the movie is just filled with Americana, and it's like a tribute to the 50s style of storytelling back in the day, and it was just delightful. At this point, when you hear the name Wes Anderson, you should know already what you're getting yourself into, and it's either you love his stuff or you can't stand his stuff. I'll say this right now, this movie right here, Asteroid City, is probably my most favorite Wes Anderson movie since Royal Tenenbaums. And if you're not familiar with what Asteroid City is about, world-changing events spectacularly disrupt the itinerary of a Junior Stargazer space cadet convention in an American desert town circa 1955. Not much to go off on there, but that's really all you need to know about this movie. The thing that really stood out for me, especially hearing Wes Anderson speak about it at the screening I went to, was that everything was filmed practically. No green screens whatsoever. So that means all the desert stuff that you see on film, all the buildings, the backdrops and all that, that's real stuff. They built all that. They built their own little desert town in Spain where they filmed. And all that hard work really speaks loudly on the big screen when you see it visually. I mean, it was just phenomenal. The best way I can explain this is that I felt like I was going into a museum, like a MoMA, and going to an exhibit and just going through a gallery and just seeing all the shots scene by scene, just walking through the halls, because each shot, each still, each moment of this film can be a still, something that you could see framed up on a museum wall. It was just so beautiful the way this movie is shot. And that's one thing that Wes Anderson does really well. He's really honed in on that craft of his, where he really knows how to paint a pretty picture. And of course, you have your very familiar Wes Anderson tropes here. You have your very perfectly symmetrical framing, quick pan shots, sometimes long pan shots, your quirky characters with your even quirkier dialogue, and a fantastic blend of music and soundtrack to go along with everything that you're watching on screen. Everything is there, and everything is all full on Wes Anderson. He has really, for me, keeps topping himself over and over again, and it just made this whole movie very much enjoyable. Story-wise, I mean, I don't want to spoil anything for a lot of you out there, but it's very comparable to maybe a movie like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, with a hint of Lost. Now, hear me out on this. I know Lost is maybe an extreme example of what to compare this movie to, but you got a bunch of people who find themselves in this part of America, isolated because of certain events that's happened, and they're all kind of of learning about each other and all getting to know each other. And in a way, they're also learning about themselves. So when you take that with like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, then I think that's a pretty decent representation of what's to expect in this movie. Of course, with the Wes Anderson quirkiness and all that. Just like you've seen with his more recent movies, this film is also very layered. So what I'll say is that there is a story within a story here. And the way that he balances the two was done so well and very seamlessly and very evenly paced throughout the film, at least in my opinion. Just like you could easily say with some of his other films, this film is almost made for the stage, and it kind of plays out that way during many moments as you're watching. And again, it's kind of hard to see what other director can do all that if it's not Wes Anderson. And again, to speak really quickly on the American aspect of it, especially dealing with an era in the 50s, is, you're in the middle of nowhere, you're a small town and all that. And you know how, the paranoia sometimes was there, especially in the 50s when you're dealing with post-World War II and the dawn of the Cold War, kind of like the invention of rock and roll with Elvis Presley blowing up on the scene. They find themselves in this desert, and that's where they're pretty much miles away from where they're testing the atom bomb and stuff. So of course, with that era and mixing it in with like a small town, you get a lot of those like little quirks and nuances for that time, especially when you're dealing with so many people from very points in their lives and different areas and everything. So it's interesting to meld all those people together and have them share one thing as a whole unit. And seeing how they deal with all that stuff. The cast. Can we talk about the cast? What can I talk about? The cast was just fabulous. Of course, Wes has his stable of people that he loves working with, especially Jason Schwartzman, who's been in so many of his movies. But it's so interesting to see him here now because he's pretty much up front and center as one of the main leads of this movie. And I haven't seen him do that since Rushmore. So it's really interesting to see that progression from Rushmore to now, and how he's really, matured as an actor. And he is just a delight to see on screen, and perfect chemistry with everyone else around him. And of course, we do have some newcomers in the Wes Anderson universe here. And the ones I will shout out and call out as the ones who stood out for me the most were Maya Hawke and Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks, especially at his age right now, feels like a perfect fit for Wes Anderson films. Very similar to like Bill Murray. Tom Hanks has that, comedic timing, that deadpan that he can do sometimes. The way he carry dialogue of this nature, he does such a great job with this, and he feels just at home within the Wes Anderson world. And Maya Hawke, oh, what a delight. I've been a huge fan of hers ever since she showed up on Stranger Things. She too has that quirkiness to her that I think speaks very well for a Wes Anderson type of film, and I think she did a brilliant job at representing herself here as well. Steve Carell was very interesting too, and with his time on screen, it was nice to see him. I don't know if I could say that he's a perfect fit for this world, but he did have some interesting and very funny moments. And that's the thing, this movie had a lot of comedy, had a lot of good story points and some emotional moments. And that's one thing that Wes does really well too, is being able to blend all that together to make it a little bit more seamless. The reason why I like to say that this is my most favorite movie since Royal Tenenbaums is because there's a lot of family elements that play out through this film. And a lot of those moments I felt very heartwarming and very touching. So for me, this movie had like a good mix of all of that stuff. Now, like I said before, of course, I don't want to spoil anything, but the one thing I will say is that you can tell that this was a very COVID-centric movie. And when I say that, that means that he definitely penned this during that time, and he admits it to himself. Because, again, you're dealing with a group of people who are being quarantined because of an event that happens. If you've seen the trailer, you can kind of guess already what that event is. And they're having to deal with each other while still maintaining and keeping to themselves, but also feeling the frustrations and kind of losing their minds a little bit because they can't seem to go anywhere and escape this little part of America. But overall, I will say this movie is extremely charming. It is very, very enjoyable and very entertaining. I'm not going to say it's one of his best films, but it's definitely up there, maybe for me, top 5 of what he's done. This is already his 11th film, so we're talking about a good library of stuff to choose from here. So at the end of the day, I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. Really enjoy it. Highly highly recommend it. If you're into more of these art house type of films, I know Wes Anderson isn't for everybody, and after 10, now 11 movies, if you find yourself not being able to get into any of his films, then this movie is definitely not going to be for you. But if you are a huge Wes Anderson fan like I am, then you are definitely not going to be disappointed with this at all whatsoever. And that's where I leave it to all of you, because I always say at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what I think, what matters most is what all of you think. Is this a movie that you're looking forward to watching in theaters when it comes out? Or if you happen to see it already, let me know all your thoughts about this in the comments below. Matter of fact, if you are a Wes Anderson fan, what is your most favorite Wes Anderson movie, or top 3? Let me know about that in the comments below as well. Right now, I'll say it's Royal Tenenbaums, Rushmore, and this. I can kind of go back and forth on all this, but I believe Asteroid City has now cracked into my top 3 most favorite Wes Anderson films. So dying to hear what all your favorites are, but that's going to be it for me for now. Again, thank you so much for watching. If you're brand new here and you want to see more of this type of content, then make sure to, of course, hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell to get notified every time a new video is posted on the channel. If you're interested in having Low-Key Geek on the go, check out the Low-Key Geek podcast channel on your podcast platform of choice, where you can find audio versions of what we do here, but most importantly, the MovieTime movie review podcast that I do with my buddy Blake, and the Talking Talk Pop Culture News of the Moment podcast. A little bit more unconventional. It's more like news clippets and stuff, and I talk about that. You can find all of that stuff there for your downloading and listening pleasure. Last but not least, if you're in a position to further help support this channel and help this channel grow, then check out the affiliates that we have listed in the description of this video. Father's Day is this week. Graduations are happening all around us, so you could find a nice gift for your loved ones, or maybe something for yourself. Ain't nothing wrong with treating yourself at all. And by participating, you will be helping support this channel at no additional cost to you. And for all of that support, I am truly thankful. All right, y'all, I'm going to head on out. Until next time, stay cool, stay classy, stay safe. Catch you all in the next one. All right, peace out, y'all.